Hello and Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to yet another episode of Career Talks with CTU, a podcast series with the maestros in the field, with a clear intention to direct you towards your dream goals, career, and areas of service. Today at Career Talks, we have the pleasure of having with us one of the finest and most prolific names in the legal industry. A law graduate from the University of Manchester, with an LLM from City University, UK, followed by a call to the bar from the Honourable Society of Lincoln's Inn. An advocate presenting himself in the Supreme Courts of Pakistan, and titled with the privilege of being the youngest in the history of enrollments. Currently serving as head of chambers at his law firm titled as GSS Law Associates. An accomplished litigant precisely handling civil matters, with an active media presence as a spokesperson providing his thorough analysis on legal and constitutional issues. With nearly and over 100 judgments under his name in the most credible and renowned legal journals of Pakistan covering political legal issues. Also served as an additional Advocate General Sindh for both private and government and semi-government departments, as well as prominent industries as textile, oil and gas, and even real estate giants. With nearly 15 years of enriched experience in the area of litigation and advisory service, it is my honor to welcome Barrister Ghulam Shabir Shah. Thank you so much for being with us, sir.
Pleasure is all mine.
Studying your trajectory, I observed that there has been a penchant for law ever since you started off. Just let me know, was it something that came to you naturally as a student, and I'll take you back in your days, or is it something that was you were motivated towards, or was this an advice coming from your parents, or there was a pressure that you have to become a lawyer from the family, or it was a very conscious decision for you to take up the role and responsibilities of being where you are, or even taking up this field of study?
First of all, let me thank you that you were very and far too kind in my own introduction, because when you were mentioning such a detailed introduction, I thought that you're talking about somebody else.
Thank you.
So you're far too kind, I would say again. And coming back to your question, I initially never wanted to be a lawyer. That is, when I was very young, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. But later on, I was not sure what to do. After my intermediate, I have gone to Sakhar for schooling. And I always wanted to do something which doesn't have to do anything with maths, chemistry, or physics.
Okay.
So I was like, let's give life a new start, because I was never good at maths, physics, or chemistry. The only thing that seemed to make sense was law. So I gave it a shot, and I went to Boston after my intermediate from Sakhar.
Okay. Wow.
And one more interesting thing is, back in those days, it was important to do A levels. And if you haven't done that, not many universities, good universities, will give you an offer. So I had to do a foundation because I hadn't done A levels. And I remember it was almost impossible to get an offer from a good university, but I never gave up. And luckily, I got in University of Manchester, which was ranked at number 5 back then in
Yes.
2005. So that's it. I never looked back afterwards.
So was it like how was the cultural shift from Sakhar being not such not being advanced, belonging to a place where apparently education is considered to be a huge dip, moving from there to immediately Boston and taking up that pathway? How did that happen? I mean, what inclined you to make a decision towards the field in itself?
To be honest, Sakhar may be considered or perceived to be backwards. But the school that I went to, uh, right from the beginning, and in particular, I would talk about APS,
Yeah,
Army
Army
Public
Public
School.
School, yes.
So my metric was from Army Public School, and before that, I went to Saint Saviour's. There too, it's a fairly advanced learning system that they provide there. So these two schools in particular, Army Public School was fantastic, I would say. So much so that in terms of my education, when I went to Boston, because for foundation, a lot of students from Europe and Canada and US, they would come and do their foundation year in the UK. When I say Boston, it's a very small town in England,
Yes.
somewhere near Lincolnshire
Yeah.
and Petersburg. Um, there, I thought myself to be quite advanced than other students.
Really?
So I would, in terms of education, I would not agree with you that Sakhar was backwards. But in terms of a cultural shift,
Yes.
it was huge. So much so that I was depressed in the first 6 months
Right.
because the transformation was huge for any student, and you would know a lot of students prepare to go for their advanced studies to England. It's not just education, it's the whole system of living away from home. You have to cook yourself.
Yes.
You have to cope up with other colleagues. Their culture is different.
Yeah.
And the way we are pampered here around our friends, we leave the whole world behind
Yes.
and we go to a new place where you start from scratch, no matter whoever you may be in your hometown.
Yeah.
And there, when you go, most important is not studies if you survive as a person, because you have to stand up and survive. So it was the most tough and challenging experience for me going from Sakhar when I had never stayed out of home
Yes.
before.
Yes.
And then if I survived that, after that, I've never looked back.
And the reason that I'm glad that you mentioned it, Sakhar has a lot of potential. Having said that, potential for a lot of good education centers also. You belong to APS, which is considered to be one of the very credible names. There is City, there is Beacon in Sakhar, but still there are individuals and students and there's a huge chunk of these students in Sakhar or in any other interior like Thatta and Ladkana, etc., who are very thriving as potential as individuals, but they're very keen to deliver, and they don't get enough avenues and platforms to do that, or better educational systems to support their kind of like interests and acumen. When this transition happened and when you completed your journey, was there a decision, a conscious decision that you made that this is the field that I had to stick with, or was there any sort of ambiguity in your mind that maybe I should have a plan B in line?
So I'd respond to this in two ways, because when you were asking this, I wanted to shed light on something similar, and then I'd come back to your question if you don't mind. One important thing is that at the time when I was going for bar,
Right.
this was 2000 and to Manchester. This was 2004 and 5, and from Sakhar district or the neighboring district in the same division, I don't remember many people who would have gone abroad during that time. Most certainly, in Sakhar, there were extremely few examples.
Yeah.
So as soon as I'd left, I would tell you happily that at least 3 to 4 dozen children have gone, and most of them are very well known to me. They would come to me, and especially their fathers, they would come to me and they'd ask me of whether I can recommend them any college or university, how my experience was. So much so that I had to literally go with 6 different individuals and dropped them to their respective colleges. They would be hearing now, but because we were well connected,
yes.
they would be like, no, not only are you recommending, but you must travel with them.
Certainly.
And then I had to go with them. I couldn't say no. So I am very happy to share with you that after myself, I'm sure a lot of people would have gone before, we know them. But in interior Sindh, this
Sort of
breakthrough has happened,
Yes.
that everybody looks at the other, that all right, because I hope nobody takes this negatively, but in Sindh, this trend was never there. In interior Sindh in particular, we never
Yes.
used to send our children abroad for studies. And, so this has, in the last 2 or 3 decades,
Yes,
the
it has
change
changed.
that we've seen, in particular, even as lawyers. You see, again, we might shift away from the topic, but even today in the Supreme Court, it is considered as to why there is no judge who's made it to the Supreme Court who could be from interior Sindh, because even the judges who are based in Karachi, yes, they go to the Supreme Court, but then strictly speaking, they are not from interior Sindh. Lastly, we only had Justice Faisal Arab, who made it to the Supreme Court.
Yes.
But him too, there were mixed views that he has throughout his life resided in Karachi. His practice was in Karachi. So that's some other topic. But today, Alhamdulillah, in the Sindh High Court, we have brilliant judges from interior Sindh. And if
Who
I
have
were
practiced in interior Sindh as
yes,
well.
if I were to name two, Justice Salahuddin Pamar,
Excellent. Yes.
outstanding, brilliant mind.
Yes.
I mean, if you see his court,
Yes.
he is so quick. He is excellent. And Justice Iqbal Kalodo, he is another brilliant mind. You appear before him, you see his judgments. They are outstanding.
Yes.
And Sindhi lawyers, I mean, I would say, and I hope my Urdu-speaking friends forgive me for saying that, but my most favorite lawyers, whether it is the old guns, like you call it, Hafiz Pirzada Saab,
Yes,
of course,
yes,
I've
of
worked
course.
for him.
Yes.
I've learned from him whatever I am because of him. But him, and then even today, the young Sindhi lawyers, my contemporaries, my seniors, most of them who are my favorite lawyers are Sindhis. Coming back to the point, that it's a wonderful trend
Yes.
in the last 2 decades,
Yes.
which we've seen.
Yes.
Forgive me, I forgot your question. What was that?
No, I think I'm really glad you mentioned that. And since a lot of our audience is amongst students, and particularly Denning students, and they do a huge chunk, a majority of them, in fact, they belong to interior Sindh. So they will be very happy to hear this.
Yes.
That, your favorites lie among those who are
Yes.
from interior Sindh. Because I think when you come from a sort of a culture or a tradition which is considered to be slightly uptight, you tend to, thrive or struggle or, kind of like deliver more hard work as opposed to any other person
Absolutely.
with more privileges.
100%
So the
agree.
lesser the privileges you have, the more fire you have inside you to, perform and kind of like, prove your worth. When it comes to our students in particular, and this is the department's responsibility also, to train them from a very early age. And by training, we also mean a mind makeup. There has to be a certain level of clarity that they need to get in terms of which field to pick. When do you think in the first year, because obviously we are talking about, we are referring to the audience of local and both international law students, do you think there should be an early start when it comes to them deciding as to which area should they pick? Because there is a lot of perplexity as to where to head, either corporate or litigation. And for the fresh graduates, this becomes a dilemma now. That means, I don't know, assess me, dissect me, and let me know where am I supposed to head. Or a very active question that comes on my table, which way to lead through which I can make more money and get a good, stable career. Is it going to be in Karachi? Is it possible in Pakistan from an early age? What am I so any particular route or advice? And how do you look at somebody who has just graduated from LLB honors to look into the next step moving ahead with their careers?
So this is a brilliant question, first of all. And in this long question, you asked me three questions.
Yes, I
If
did.
I if I
Yes, I
forget to
did.
answer one of them, please remind me.
Yes.
One is about money, which
Yes.
I would like to deal with in the end because that's a very important question.
Yeah.
And the second one is how to choose
Yeah.
corporate or litigation and other particular subjects, commercial or civil. The third question that you had asked me was in respect of what should a student expect
Yes.
once they've graduated?
Yes.
Where should they be looking at? What should they be expecting? So these are three different questions. First things first, how do they decide when they are first years, when they keep asking you these questions? Should we be a corporate lawyer? Should we be litigators? What should we be focusing at? So my answer to that is, even in fact, in my undergraduate years, I used to think about, should we take commercial law because that was an optional subject,
Yeah.
and should we take company law? But back in those days, I think company was still an optional. I don't know if it's a compulsory subject, but these are the questions that come to your mind naturally. My answer to that is that this is not the right stage to worry about it.
Okay.
This cannot even be the right stage to worry about it, because how can you know until and unless you have tried that thing in practice? So
Right.
once you've graduated, you would obviously join a chamber, any given chamber, and then once you are given any work in the first 2 years, you will realize what is it that you like.
Right.
So there are many chambers which do both corporate and litigation. And there are some which only do litigation, some which only do corporate work.
Right.
You see, for a student to be employed in any chamber, any decent chamber, that's it. The student has already made it. That's the most important part. Whether you get into a corporate chamber or a chamber which solely deals with litigation, that's the first major breakthrough that a student would do. It is only once that you have started working, say, on litigation, and you are given two particular cases. Let's suppose you're only given bails and you have worked on bails, you may eventually like it so much that you consider yourself an expert only on bails. And then eventually you may be given some other work. You would do that work too. But for me, there are really two divisions, which is corporate and litigation. Even in litigation, a number of clients ask me, sir, आपकी एक्सपर्टीज क्या है? आप क्या सिविल काम करते हैं या फिर आप शिपिंग का काम करते हैं? माई आंसर टू दैट इज, यू सी, इफ यू आर अ लिटिगेटर, you can do any kind of work insofar as litigation is concerned.
Right.
Because the skill that you acquire, the face value that you develop, because over the years you would be expected to appear before the same judges, before the same court, every day, in and out, in and out. So it does not really matter whether the subject is shipping, whether the subject is purely even criminal for that matter. All you need to do, particularly a barrister, is how to present your case.
Right.
And that skill you will acquire irrespective of your expertise in any given subject. Obviously, corporate is slightly different, which is before any kind of preparation, before the matter goes to court. So we prepare so that in the event there is a dispute, in the event the parties were to go to court, the brief should be prepared in favor of your client.
Yeah.
So I would say that in a nutshell, the students should not worry about it at this stage.
Okay.
Once they've graduated, in the first year or second year, they will themselves realize what they are good at.
Right.
So I would say not to worry about it. Now the second question is, what should they expect after graduation? You see, I'll talk about myself, for example, and I would say that law is, I would say, after my wife, is the best thing that's happened to me. Because
Lovely.
because you see, I don't know where I would be if I was not doing law. It is such a profession, and I'm a difficult person in the sense that things excite me, but then even if I were to buy a plane or if I were to get somewhere, it would stop exciting me after a period of time. Law is the only thing where my interest, even after touching good heights, only grows further even today.
Yeah.
I am in, this is my 14th year in practice, and I would say that even now, if an interesting case were to come, I would be so involved in it that I would not be able to see outside that case. So even if I go out on dinners, if I go out wherever I be, because my mind is involved in that case,
Yes.
I would just be there. So this kind of interest or passion um, is fantastic for me, because after a period of time, when 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line, you would notice that passion and interest only decreases in any field you are or maybe. But here, my passion only increases whenever I find a good case, and it excites me. It excites me a lot. So,
So
um,
why does it excite you?
well, it
I mean, why? What would you? Why would you? How would you look at it, in a way that somebody who wishes to take up the field of litigation actively, um, you might be excited. Why? Because it comes naturally to that excitement, that passion comes naturally to you. What kept you hooked, particularly? Was it like, is stepping into new niches and diverse cases, or just wanting to be someone who is just, a master or a jack of all, and delving into new areas of, practice, and coming up with, is stepping into new industries and new domains? Um, what keeps that passion alive?
You see, I will explain this. There could be two things or three which excite anyone. One is money, of course. The other is self-love, and or third could be fame, which are
Yes,
all
certainly.
interconnected. So in the very early days of my career, this is something that I wanted to discuss also. So when I went to England, going to Manchester and doing the degree from there, and being called from Lincoln's Inn, all those 5 years could be one thing and did improve me as a person, as a lawyer. But compared to the improvement that I got from joining Hafiz Pirzada Saab's chamber, the kind of experience and the love that I got there in the first 2 years is far, far more than my early career or my childhood or even studying abroad. Com- that was comparatively nothing. The kind of experience that I got from Mr. Pirzada, and in particular, I would like to mention his son Sattar Pirzada.
Yes.
Sattar has and still is an elder brother to me, has remained my mentor, and I want to discuss this. That so once I came back, uh, Pirzada Saab and Sattar will both teach me on a case, and Sattar and me will argue a case endlessly. Now, this is very important because when students from here join a chamber, they can really get two types of bosses. A boss or a senior who would maybe perhaps not want the student the young associate to be too active. That is very unfortunate because a lot of times your own seniors are jealous from you. Your own seniors would not want you to grow and would might want you to go through the same suffering that they've been through. Which is what is
Yeah.
true. Luckily, I got such seniors like Pirzada Saab, of course, and his son Sattar, who um, um, who was learning himself
Yes.
through me, but he never felt that, well, what will he think or about me. So two words I still remember and I want to share, and I think these two sentences have had such a huge impact on my life that I feel as a person I still live for them, which is what. So one day we were sitting in our conference room, and it was a very high profile meeting. Pirzada Saab was chairing it. I think Makhdoom Ali Khan Saab was there also. And lot of high profile clients were sitting. Sattar was also sitting. Then some new point came up, and Pirzada Saab didn't say that I have brought this point or Sattar has. So he said, Asif, this young man, Shabir, he has taken up this point, and I am really happy with this point. So I didn't even have the chair in the room. I was standing there like obviously in that room. But he gave me recognition
Yeah.
and acknowledgement.
Yes.
And this was me in my first year after my.
It's a huge deal for a
That
student.
I've never forgotten that.
Yes.
That your senior in the middle of the meeting doesn't steal your point, recognizes the point, and doesn't even give credit to his own son and says, that man there,
Yeah.
it is his point. I mean,
It's
you
a
bought
force.
me over.
Yeah.
So this is again one advice to not just the students but the employers also.
Yes.
That this is how you win loyalty.
Yes.
This is how, I mean, today in the podcast, all I want to do is to talk about them.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
this is one point. The second point was, and this is more important to me, when myself and Sattar would endlessly argue a case, and he had given me the liberty to disagree with him. This is very important.
Yes.
At times, your employer can be annoyed that, well, I am saying this point, why are you disagreeing with me? So he would say, no, I welcome. Please,
It's a sign of being a democratic leader.
what is your
Yes.
input?
Yes,
Give it
yes.
to me.
Yeah.
And maybe in my hindsight, I think maybe I was not as intelligent as he said I am now. But this was a way to encourage me. He would say that, oh my God, Shabir, I never thought about this point. How have
Yes.
you thought about this point? I'd be in my own head, I would be like, wow, I am some genius.
Yes.
Which I was not. But then he would say that, Shabir, it's not a matter of, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when you will surpass me. So I am
Yes.
sure you will surpass me, but when, time will tell. Now, your boss telling you these things, I was like, okay, I am the genius
Yes.
who is going to surpass his boss, who can only think out of the box. So when you asked me a question, what is that motivational factor today which keeps me going, is that because I have in my own mind from that day onwards thought that, look, mister, you are you are not somebody ordinary, and when you think, it has to be different than what others think. So you must come out with something which is out of the box. Now, whether you call me somebody who's in self love, but this has been the motivating factor for
Yes.
me, that whenever I take up a case,
Hmm.
I I would have to think out of the box.
Yes.
I have to perform in such a manner that nobody else has.
Hmm.
So I've been living up to that reputation in my own mind.
Yes.
I'm not sure if I've been performing that well, but I think these two sentences which I've described have changed my life in a brilliant way. I have improved so much, and I have thought even about my own self that I am some. So I think
Yes.
credit goes to my seniors.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you for the time. It was a pleasure. It was extremely insightful. I think our audience got a lot of clarity as to what to expect from the fields, what are the ins and outs, how to deliver, what is the lifestyle going to be like, how is it going to change. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Thank you. I will be now moving towards the next chapter of our podcast, which is going to be much more on the corporate side. These first two episodes consolidated civil litigation, and I just hope the audience got a clarity as to what to expect from the field, how to be more resilient, how to polish and improve their competence and craft over time, and not to give up, irrespective of how many impediments hit them. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'll see you in the next podcast.